Yeah, hi everyone. So it's very good to be here. This is not only my first time in Poland, but it's also my very first time as a speaker. So please bear with me, and yeah, please give me feedback after the talk. So my name is Max. I'm based in Basel, Switzerland. I'm the co-founder of a legal tech company called Lex Ferenda, and I'm leading the front-end development at a Swiss web hosting company called Cyon. Now, I also organize a local Vue community called Vue Basel. So if you ever happen to be in Switzerland, please make sure to pay us a visit. But anyway, that's not the reason I'm here today. The reason I'm here today is pagination. And really, I'm very happy that so many people are here now, because pagination, I know how that sounds like. It sounds very boring, right? Well, I will try to make it a bit more interesting. So what is pagination anyways? Pagination, according to Wikipedia, is the process of dividing a document into discrete pages, either electronic pages or printed pages. So that means that every book and every magazine is paginated because its content is spread into multiple pages. Now, books and magazines are not really the scope of the talk today, so many of you probably know pagination like the following. Oh, sorry. So this is probably the most prominent example of pagination there is, right? And I think it was also one of the first ones. Google divides its search results into multiple pages. And this is it's basically the same with books. It's on different pages. And we do that so we don't have to fetch that much data initially. So we want to make it faster for our users. Also, they shouldn't need to scroll that much in our web page. So we make it more accessible. And well, let's take a look at how this usually is implemented in APIs. So during this talk, we're going to work with the fantastic Cat API, which is a free API. I guess it's mostly for demo reasons. And you can get information about about different cat breeds, but you can also get like random funny cat images, stuff like that. Now, they have an endpoint to fetch like a list of all the breeds, and because there are a lot of breeds, this is paginated. Now, we could run something like the following, right? We have /breeds, so that's the endpoint for the cat breeds. We give a limit, that's how many items we want to get back, and we get the page. Now in this example, we won't start with page 1, but with page 2. And if we execute that, we might get a response that looks a bit like the following. So status code 200, that means it all worked, very good. Now in the headers, it says pagination count. That's the total amount of breeds there are, that's a lot. Or at least that they keep track of. And we get the pagination page and limit that that we gave. That's just the headers. The body is like a JSON encoded list of objects. Now this is just a small excerpt. There's much more information in it. So for every breed, you get like the affection level, if it's child-friendly, if it's dog-friendly, and much, much more. It's very, very detailed. You get a list of 10 items in our case. Now, this is all quite straightforward, right? So why am I even here today? I'm here today to tell you that pagination is hard. I mean, pagination is not hard per se, don't get me wrong. It's easy to develop an application that shows a paginated list and it works, but it is hard to get right. And I hope during this talk you will see what I mean by that. Now, the web hosting company I work at, there we are developing a fairly big project. And we found that in the beginning, when we added a new paginated resource, we added so much complexity. We were repeating ourselves and just adding a lot of complexity. So we had to find a better solution for that. And really, our backend developers on this project, we're working with the big REST API. Our backend developers really are like this. Like every single resource is a list, and every list is paginated. Even if we know that there will only be like a few single entries, everything's paginated, and so we had to find a way to make this a bit easier for ourselves. And so we set out to create a library that we could use everywhere. So before we started implementing this library, we set a few requirements for it. The first one was, and this is very obvious, of course, don't load resources more than once. If nothing changed, then don't load them again. If I'm on page 1, I go to page 2 and back to page number 1, there's really no need to fetch the same data again because we already did so. It should be possible to present the same data in different views. And parameters like the current page and the page size should have no direct impact on how the data is saved, like cached in our store. What I mean by those last 2 points, I will get to a bit later. Now, because we are building our application with Vue, the library that we developed is just works for Vue. But I'm here today because it took us quite some time to get this right, and now we have a solution that we feel like works very good for us and hopefully for others too. And I'm going to walk you through the basic steps of how we created this library. And so I think you could just take the ideas and apply it to other front-end frameworks as well. So I think you can take the same core principles and develop a library for React or Angular applications too. Speaking of which, can I get a quick show of hands? Who of you is using Vue? Oh, that's a lot. Very cool. Who is using React? Oh, wow. That's a big React crowd. Very nice. Yeah, I hope that by the end of the talk, well, someone of you might get the idea and start the library, pagination library for React users too. All right, let's start with the implementation then. First of all, the logic part. Because we are building a Vue application, our logic usually lives in a Vuex store. Now, what is Vuex anyways? Vuex is a state management pattern and library for Vue applications. It serves as a centralized store for all the components in an application, with rules ensuring that the state can only be mutated in a predictable fashion. So this is the official definition of the on the Vuex website. So that means Vuex is a central store whose life cycle basically can be visualized like this. So we do have our state, which we want to present in our view. From our view, we can trigger actions that in turn manipulate the state, which then gets reflected in the view, and so on. Now, I believe the equivalent of Vuex for React is Redux, but I'm really not so sure anymore about that. Yeah. So how does our star look like? It looks a bit like that. So we want to store in our state. We want to have like a list of all the items. So let's just add the items. Now, because in Vuex we can only modify the state using mutations. This will change in Vue 3, by the way. We have to add a new mutation called setItems. Now, we will add an action to load all the data for one page. So as parameters, we get like the page we want to load and the page size. Like in our previous example, that would be page size 10 and page 2. And now, the first thing we are doing here is we are using a little helper function, getArrayPartition, whose implementation is not that hard, but also not relevant for the scope of this talk. We just get the partition that we need from the items we already have, and if we already have all the items, there's really nothing that has to be done. And we return. But if not, we are calling a so-called fetchPage function, which I will get to in a minute. Give it the page and the page size. And the result we will get from that is first of all, the total amount of items there is, and the items for the current page. So first of all, we check like if the array that we saved in our store, if the length is the same as the length that we just got from the result. If not, we'll just make it a new array and initialize it with that many with this length. And then we will just like map the page we just loaded and set it in the star. Now, the fetchPage function, that would be something that has to be provided for every single resource by the user or by the developer. The reason for that is, well, usually we would want to probably fetch data from an API here, maybe from an HTTP API. But we could also like fetch data from anywhere, basically, from the file system, for example, if we are developing Electron applications, or from anywhere else. So in this fetchPage function, we get the page and the page size from the opt. Like here, I would just do the search params, and then use window.fetch to get that data from the API. And in the end, we return an object where we have like the total amount of items, which you get from the headers. That's the pagination count from before. And items is just the list of data for this page. Yeah, so before I said something about that the data it should be possible to present the same data in different views. And we named this, in our case, we named this instances. And like, why do we even need that? If we were to build an application for this cat API, if we were to build a cat application, then there's categories. This is like a big list of categories, and it's like important in different parts of the application. So at one point we might have to like just display a table because it's a lot of categories. It's paginated, but maybe in a different part of the application we want to build a search where you can search in categories too, and yeah, this is both the same data, right? So we don't want to have this twice in our star. But also, if I navigate to page 2 on this table, it should not really change anything for our search. So that's why we are adding instances. And so let's just add that to the star. Instances in our state, that's just where we keep the configuration, like the current page and the page size for each instance. We need a mutation to set the instance config. And then we will just have a new method called update instance, where we can just update an instance, the parameters for an instance. And now this is very important. After we committed that to the star, we have to execute the load page action for this instance, because if like in one instance the user changed to page number 2, then we have to make sure that we load the data for this page. And because of that, we will modify our load page function a little bit. So instead of it getting the page and page size as parameters, it will just get the instance ID, and we'll load that data from the state. Now, so far so good. There's one very cool thing in Vuex called getters. And what are getters? You can think of them as computed properties for stars. Like computed properties, a getter's result is cached based on its dependencies and will only re-evaluate when some of its dependencies have changed. So that's very cool. Computed properties for the star, right? So how does it look like? Let's add a new getter. So a getter is a function. A function who only gets one parameter, which is the state. And in this case, it will just return state.instances. Now, this is not very helpful yet. But the cool thing is getters don't have to return a value. They can also just return a function. So instead of an instances getter, we will now have an instance getter that returns a function when provided with the ID, returns like all the config parameters for this instance. We can make another getter for the items too, where we are using our ominous getArrayPartition function that we used before, and we will just get this will just return all the items for the current selected page. Now that's basically all of the star logic. Now let's get to the Vue components. And this is how a Vue component could look like. I already imported the mapGetters helper function from Vuex. We already set like an instance ID. And well, now let's just map the getters that we just defined on the Vuex star. Then we'll have a local computed property called items, which uses the helper function with the instance ID. And then we do the same for like the current page. So using this, we always get like the current page for this instance. Now, you might have noticed that I used a little different syntax here. So instead of this computed property being a function, it is now an object with a get function. That is because Vue also allows you to create set functions on computed properties, and this is really cool. So what we can do now is we do a set. We add a set function to the current page computed property, who will just then dispatch the update instance action in the Vuex store, and thus making sure to updating the parameters and loading the data for the page. Now, in our template, we can now render a list of the, we can now render the current page of items, right? This is as easy as just using a v-for. And there we are using the cat component that we already developed somewhere. And this will always display the current page. Now, that is cool, but there's no pagination yet, right? So let's add that. This is like the most basic form of pagination, just a link to get to the next page. And obviously, you could add much more than that. But this is to demonstrate, right? So all we have to do to get to the next page is just updating a local variable. We just do current page ++ to increment the current page property, and the rest is being done automatically. Now this will look a little something like this. So now this is obviously not perfect yet. We would like to add like a link to go back to the previous page, maybe only and display those links if there is actually a next or a previous page, or you could even like display a link for all the pages there are. That all would be really easy because you could just have another computed property because we have the total amount of items and we have the page size, and it's a simple calculation, right? Now, all you would have to do now is create functions to make it easier to create new resources, to create new instances. Then you wrap it and just use it everywhere in your application. Now this is a very simple solution, but it already brings a few advantages. Like first and foremost, there's less code complexity. So for all new resources you're adding, you just have to provide this fetch page function. Oh, sorry. There's already a built-in in-memory cache. Like that example I mentioned before, if you go to page 2, back to page number 1, it would just load that data from the store. And page resizing and navigation between pages just got super easy. You're just manipulating or changing the value of a local variable. So very cool, right? Now that we have all of this logic in a central place, there's actually much more that we can do now. And here's just a few things that we thought of when building our library. First is endless scrolling. So you probably all know endless scrolling, right? So instead of just displaying one page, if the users scroll to the bottom of a page, we can just display a link, which I'm not sure gets shown here, but just imagine that there is a load more link at the bottom. Or even better, you can just detect when the user scroll to the bottom and then load the next page. Filtering and search. So the cat API has another endpoint for images, where it gives you random cat images for different categories, which I just realized you cannot see. But at the top, there is like a selection of the categories, and then it will just display you random cat pictures from these categories. Now, this is the same resource. It is the same instance. It's just one parameter that changed. Then obviously what you could do is prefetching. If you display your data in a table and you know that well, either your users might have a slow internet connection or that maybe your API is not that fast, what you could do is you could already like prefetch the data for the next page. And when the user changes to it, it's there instantly. And now those are just some examples we could think of, and there's probably much more that you could do. Yeah, the possibilities are endless, I would say. Now that library that I mentioned, we developed that internally. We are using it in multiple places already. It works very well for us. And we made it open source. It's available at, on GitHub on Cyon/Vuex pagination. And yeah, if you think that could be useful to you, then please just give it a star. And if you do have any additional questions on how we developed it or how you could use it, please come to find me after my talk. That's it. Thank you very much.